Now that we have covered the key principles, let's see how they work in real teaching scenarios, okay? I'll guide you step by step through activities that shift from teacher-centered to student-centered learning, all right? Take a look at this first scenario. It's one that we've all been through, right? So we're teaching vocabulary and it's food, drinks, anything like that, all right? Here's a suggested idea on how to implement this in a student-centered approach. The very first thing is a guessing game. So you show part of an image on the slide, for instance, right? Or use a mystery box. We love mystery boxes, right? Or a mystery bag. We just get something, and maybe it's the real food, like apples, oranges, right? Things like that in the mystery box, or just flashcards, maybe something they can really see the items, and you let them guess what it is, right? They see part of it. Then, after a few guesses, right, they see the images, the complete images, or you open the box, the bag, right? And you check if they were correct or not. This is the moment for drilling. So this is the moment that you're going to say, guys, let's repeat, apple, apple. They say apple, right? Or it's an apple, it's an apple, it's an orange, and so it goes. This moment specifically of the drilling is more teacher-centered, right? But overall, the idea, right, the activity itself is more student-centered, yeah? But this part, yes, you're guiding them and teaching them how to do something. After they discover the pictures, the real pictures or the real items, this is the moment for practice. So it's a conversation, let's say a conversation between two people, and you model, remember that from the previous video, you, the teacher, you model that with a student, and you say, for example, Laura, do you like apples? And Laura answers, yes, I do, or no, I don't. Okay, now Laura, you asked me, do you, about something else, like oranges. Do you like oranges? And so Laura asks, do you like oranges? And it's a conversation, and then you have them interacting pairs or in trios to ask and answer questions. Or another guessing game in this form of a dialogue, right? So which fruit am I thinking? And then the student says, oh, is it big? Is it round? Right? Is it red? And so it goes. And so there's language production over there as well. And it's more student-centered because students get to discover something. It's not you telling them, just telling them, but they discover, they use, and they interact in a very contextualized manner, a very meaningful way as well. And chances are that they will remember this better as well. Let's say you're teaching something else, you're teaching grammar, the past simple tense. Here's a suggestion, sorry. The context is students read a story. Of course, you tell them the context. Let's read a story about two people who went traveling. Da, da, da. Okay, this is the story. Then there is pair work or trios. They react to the story. So let's imagine that at some point somebody called the police. Yeah. So they react to the story by telling their friends their opinion. So do you think calling to the police was a good idea? Oh, yes, it was. Or no, it wasn't. Do you remember the language that we provide the students with? So it could be here. Yes, it was because, or no, it wasn't because, da, da, da. Up until this point, students are just using the language in a real scenario without realizing it's in the past or anything like that. They are just reacting, reading the story and interacting with the story in a way. Now, you can show them a few questions on the board or on a worksheet or, something that they can read, and they are the ones who discover the rule. So here are 3 questions that they can use, like in pairs or individually. They can decide first, and then they share with a partner. If the text is in the past or present tense, and how they know that, and how are the verbs used, and how are they formed, and all of these questions. So the idea is that they discover the rule. Think of that. This is very different from just going to the classroom and saying, "Hi, everybody, today we're going to talk about the past," okay? So I'm going to write a few things here on the board. Please copy what I'm writing, okay? Okay, and then you write a few things on the board, you explain that it's ed, regular verbs, they end in ed, and that there's no discovery in that. They just see how it is, and that's it. But it's not very meaningful, right? And it's not student-centered at all. By having them work out the rule, you're giving them the chance to really remember, because they were the ones actually coming up with something, right? After the rule discovery, they can actually share what they discovered with other groups, to the classroom. And then, of course, there's practice. They can, of course, do something on the book, something more controlled, and then later on, a dialogue, a conversation using the rules that they discovered. Yeah? It's more student-centered because they are the ones discovering and applying the rules that they saw. It wasn't you. Remember, you are the facilitator, but you are not teaching them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're just guiding them, so they get there on their own. Yeah. Another classroom idea that you know is gamification. Of course, by using games, we are able to provide them with chances to use the vocabulary or the grammar rules in a way that they are the center of their own universe at that moment, right? They have to do something. They have to play. They have to find out. They have to guess. They are the ones actively doing something. They don't just have to listen, or they don't have to just take notes, but they are much more empowered in that way. So here are a few suggestions of games. Maybe you know these ones. If you don't, you can just talk to your assessor, talk to a peer, and because they are very common in the world of teaching English. If you just Google them by having something like the name of the game and in teaching English, something like this, you will see lots and lots of things online as well. So, for example, the very first one is a board race. So it could be, for example, you're reviewing categories like animals or anything like that. And you divide the class into teams. Let's say group 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 columns of students, right? And the very first student in group 1 is João, let's say. So João goes to the board, writes an animal, like, for example, penguin, goes back, and then the second person goes and writes another animal, like lion, then goes back, then another person comes and writes a different animal, tiger, and so it goes. All of that in 2 minutes, let's say. So then all students race to the board to do so. Yeah, this is one of the possibilities. Hot potato is a very common game. We love it, yeah. And the idea of hot potato is that when the song stops, they need to do something. The student holding the ball needs to produce something with it. Very similarly to a treasure hunt. When students find the information or the treasure, they must do something with it. So they can they can say the word from using the target language. They can come up with a sentence. Using that, they can answer a question based on that. They can ask a question to another friend, and the other friend has to answer. endless possibilities, but the idea is that they actively do something, right? Here are some others. You can just, if you don't know them, they're very common games in our world of teaching English, like escape room, right? They need to come up with a way to leave the room. Yeah. Auction, they have to pay for sentences and, you know, buy the sentences that are right and correct the other sentences. Running dictation, they have to go and dictate something to another friend. They see something, they go back and they dictate something. Broken telephone, which used to be called Chinese whispers, now yeah, broken telephone. So you whisper something into somebody's ear and they have to understand what it is. You see that there are so many other games as well. The idea of gamification is that it helps students because it's interactive. Yes, it is competitive, but much more than that, it's cooperative. Students need to help each other to find a solution to something, for example. So all of these ideas, if you're teaching vocabulary, grammar, whatever it is, there is something student-centered that can be used. It doesn't have to be always you, the teacher, saying something to a student who is only there, you know, listening and copying something from the board. Yeah. I hope you took notes because we've talked a lot. We've talked about lots of things, a lot. So I hope you took notes. Yeah. And well, this is it for the applications at this point. Okay.